Hey y'all. This week I read chapter 23 and chapter 26 from my textbook, from the last section of this textbook. And so this section focused on assessment. So here are a few key takeaways from those two chapters. The first chapter focused on how African American 8th grade students approached math problem solving, and the second broke down a framework for understanding functions. And both of those were interesting to me because I do teach a diverse group of students, and so I think it's always important to understand all of our students as best that we can. So I chose that chapter. And then the second chapter that I chose was on functions, because functions is one of the key things that we teach in 8th grade math and in Algebra 1. So looking at chapter 23, the study looked at 24 African American 8th grade students. They were in a pre-college program designed to encourage the underrepresented students in math and science careers. So they had a really cool opportunity there. Essentially what was found was that these students typically used a holistic reasoning approach. So they looked at the whole picture of their problems. I probably should tell you how they researched this. They gave them 5 math problems, 5 math tasks, and asked them to think aloud as they solved each one. And then so a researcher would sit with them and listen. After every problem, the students would even have like a little interview, like a retrospective interview with those researchers, and they would ask them questions. They looked at how they went about solving problems, but the researchers also wanted to know how these students felt about their mathematical ability. And so they found 2 things that seemed to be very different from your other students. The researcher said we need more, we need to study all of our diverse populations. We need to make sure that we're looking at if there is a difference in how these different students approach problem solving. So the number one thing was that they looked at things through a holistic reasoning style. And then the second thing was that their confidence and their high self-esteem, because they typically had a lot of confidence. Even if they weren't successful, they saw this, the whole experience of solving a problem as something that helped them learn. So they saw it as a learning process. I thought that was really powerful. So even if their confidence and their self-esteem didn't necessarily predict whether they were successful in the problems. So what did the researchers call for? They called for students to intentionally include both a holistic and analytical reasoning in their math education. And then the researchers did note, that maybe the African American students were more confident because of earlier successes, repeated encouragement, or maybe it was a pre-college program. So they did kind of say this may not necessarily be the case, but did call for teachers to use both the holistic and analytical reasoning. And then the second chapter was on a function framework, and so it talked about functions in mathematics and described a framework built around 4 key competencies. Those were modeling, interpreting, translating, and reifying. I'm not sure if I'm saying that word right. I should have looked that up before I decided to talk about it. So modeling meant moving from a real-world problem to a mathematical representation. And then we also discussed the 3 types of representations: equations, tables, and graphs. And then interpreting is taking those different representations and understanding what they mean in real life context. Then translating, moving from one representation to another, like a graph to an equation. And then finally, they also wanted to look at if students could create a mental object from what initially seemed like a process or a procedure. So like understanding a function as an object, not just a series of steps, like it's a component. And then alongside that, we need to focus on procedural skills as well. However, that's typically the only thing that's emphasized in a traditional algebra course. And so this framework kind of said we need to really be focusing on all 4 of these key competencies: modeling, interpreting, and translating, and then creating a mental object from that, being able to actually see this as a mental object. Thank y'all.